Hello and welcome to the Winners Find a Way show. I am your host, Trent Clark, CEO of Leadershipity, serial entrepreneur. I am a Bloom Growth coach. I am an entrepreneur organization member for over 14 years and serve as the West Michigan president right now. I'm also the author of Leading Winning Teams. And probably most people know me from speaking around the world and the fact that I coached in professional baseball for over 13 years and coached in 3 World Series.
Whoa.
And today on the Winners Find a Way show, I have got my special friend and guest, Mollie Eastman. Mollie, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Look at that lineup of things that you have accomplished. Oh my goodness,
I know.
that's amazing. That's incredible.
And you know
I
what?
gotta
I
step
tuned
it
out.
up.
I've done it all without sleep, Mollie. You're gonna hate me. You're gonna be like, you're a new client, Trent. You
You
gotta
are
get going.
bearing the lead. I didn't know about that part. Okay.
This podcast, people, is going to be formidable because on Winners Find a Way, we always bring the 1%. We always talk about the people who have done something very special, often overcomers in this world. And Mollie's no different. You know, Syracuse grad, now living down in Austin. Mollie's married to Blake Eastman, both entrepreneurial husband and wife who are just killing it. I call them dinks. They're just killing it out there because they haven't started the kids yet, but they're going to. And super excited. You have the #2 sleep podcast. And as we talk about, I'm a strength and conditioning guy, right? I spent my whole years in this, and recovery is such a factor for us. And especially in these 3 categories, I had these big 3 categories that I see all the time: entrepreneurs, special forces, and pro athletes, right? This is my constant world. And recovery is a big deal. It is formidable about how we show up. And I'm tracking my HRV, my heart rate variability, which is, coming directly into my sleep.
Yeah.
And I have found and as you know, as the #2 podcast, like in the country, people, like, this is great. Sleep is a skill. And if you have not checked it out, you are going to want to sign up for her newsletter, Sleep Obsessions, because Mollie delivers all sorts of good content on this, which we're going to talk about today. But this is a real factor that probably one of the most overlooked skill sets for people. And we have just got busier and busier. And this is the first sacrifice. Is that fair?
That is so fair. It is completely fair. And I'm so glad you kind of set it up like that to really acknowledge just how important this area of our lives is. It's something we do 1/3 of our lives, on average 26 years are spent asleep. But many of us have not thought too much about it. And I'm certainly not trying to sit here and act like the genesis of the reason I got into this was not because of the fact that I actually went through my own sleep breakdown, basically, and I really struggled with my sleep. And for so much of the beginning part of my life, had no sense of power around this area, was struggling in that area, but also just thought that there was nothing to do about it. I thought that was just how it was for me. It was the cards I'm dealt. It's like kind of a fixed situation. It's in my genes. I'll sleep when I'm dead. And so many of us might just almost have this resignation around it, or, oh, there's nothing to look at here unless something's acute. And so I'm really a stand that we start to think differently about our sleep, and that it's really just try on this concept that it's a skill set. And like any skill set, we start where we are, and there's an opportunity to kind of rise up in our knowledge base. And when we know more, we can do more, we can do better. And I think that's really where it stands with sleep. And we want to remember that, is this an area worth taking on? And I know I'm biased, but I would argue, yes, it is. We struggled to find a single area of life that's not impacted when our sleep isn't working. You could kind of market it a bit of a panacea of things that it can impact, surprising things too. Even looking at, say, like interpersonal interactions, ability to read faces. I work with a lot of high stakes poker players. So reading tells, their cognition, longevity, age is just so many things that are impacted in a positive way when things are working, and in a not so positive way when they're not working.
Yeah. And you're wearing a monitor right now. I think you're wearing an Aura there, right?
That's right.
And so like we're monitoring now, and we have an ability to really lean into data points. And I think it's something we really got to talk about some of the best tools for that. But, one of the things I find about sleep is very similar to like sexual dysfunction
Yeah.
and eating habits and things like that. When things go poorly, the pressure of this actually makes it worse, right? Because
Yes.
you know what? I need to sleep right now, Molly. I
Right.
need to rest. I got a big event tomorrow. And darn it, I'm putting my head down. Like, what am I going to do? I'm
Yeah.
amping up my intensity, which is not helping in any way, and
Exactly.
pressurizing myself, pressure self-applied, right? And so I'm applying these pressures in these situations. And very similar to those other things, they're daily activities, and that pressure's not adding any value. Like,
No.
in fact, it's quite the opposite.
Yeah.
It's actually formidably going against me and making this compoundingly worse. And
Ugh.
so we, this idea that I've got to have some tools. And I mean, when I started really thinking about, some of the things I did, which was I did, program through Koya, which is a big health program, working a lot of
Sure.
pro athletes, entrepreneurs. Koya is a great group. Jason's a good friend of mine. And man, a sleep routine. Like, hey man, there's a ton of stuff I can do the night before that makes my day so much better, that makes my sleep so much better. And I get to have control over that. And it's really not hard, right? There are some habits that can be built. And those are just little things I want to talk about. But as we talk about your deep drive on this and sleep obsessions, you have been out here now, wow, I think well over a decade, educating people on this, and it's fabulous. One of the things I want most people to know about you that most people don't know about you, Mollie Eastman, is that you're an ambivert. And I think this is kind of a lean in because everyone sees Mollie, the stage presence, and you're out there and social, and you are an outgoer, like, and you love that, right? Like me, you go out, get energy from the group, but you're also an only child. And
Yes.
so I like to back it down and get my quiet time, and it's Molly time, and I'm going to recharge. I don't need all this energy all the time. So you kind of split there. Is that fair?
That's completely fair. And I think it's a good parallel to sleep because, our sleep wake cycles, it's this duality. We're diurnal creatures, meaning we're meant to be active by day and at rest at night. And I
Mhm.
think this kind of relationship to even our, social battery or what have you. I mean, a lot of these are narratives. But when we think about how can we just have that clear balance? And so while to your point, like, you see on socials always those highlight reels of the being out and, really like the front facing. But it's certainly in my life, the power can also come from really being thoughtful. And I've had to learn this over the years of building in that off time, that recovery time, that buffer space to kind of have that workability so that it's not all go, go, go. And so often when I work with certainly entrepreneurs, high performers, athletes, etc., although athletes tend to be much more astute as far as the need to build in recovery
Yeah.
thoughtfully.
Yeah.
But certainly I do see for a number of people that just want to push it, and I've been there, that pushing can very well inlie the problem as it relates to both our sleep and just our experience of life.
Yeah, and I think there's that. What we're learning, I think now, is that we really need to get down and bring the parasympathetic down like a notch.
Yes.
And I have a child. I have 5 children, right? One of my guys was.
Wow.
We always talk about like he just crashed and burned, right? He was to be like, it's daytime, and he's the
Yes.
Tasmanian devil, like
Yeah.
he's just spinning it up.
Yeah.
And then at 10 p.m. he just crashes and burns. I mean, like it's
Oh,
just like
yeah.
boom. I
Done.
stop, drop, dead to the world. And quite frankly, there's some balance in it. Like he would go hard as his day,
Sure.
but he would sleep hard and recover. And when the morning came, it was like, okay, ready to
Okay.
go again.
Round
Here we
two. Okay.
go. And so it's like,
Nice.
wow, there's maybe some real balance here. Like, and so
Yes.
where it's a thing, and I think that people do not understand. And I know you give education in the newsletter. Do you
Mhm.
do some of the social stuff like you said, kind of your ambivert? Do you also show when you're in a quiet reading space and saying, "Hey, I'm doing this because this is so important to me, bringing back my parasympathetic as I get ready for rest. These are some of my routines. Do you show that in some of your social?
That's a great question. I've been showing that more in my newsletter, our cohorts and our courses, but I absolutely need to show more of that on social. And I think, it's the beginning of the year. We have kind of New Year's resolutions, all the things. Part of what I'm really committing to this year and really creating is just showing more in general all around,
Yeah,
the good, the bad. Because I think for too long, I've related to social as kind of just, all right, education around sleep and kind of more transactional. And I
yeah,
really want to change that relationship. So, to answer your question, that is a little, but I need to do more because it is so, so important.
yeah,
And I think that goes into my kind of only child ambivert ways is that when I'm kind of doing that kind of retreating and like being, the last thing I'm thinking about is getting out the phone and doing the thing. So I gotta
yeah.
retrain my mind a little.
Yeah, and it's so
you know?
true. Like I'm the
Yeah.
same way. Like this is so good for me. I take a quiet time in the room and watch the sunset and do some
Yeah.
breathing exercises. I don't need to do this on social. This is not getting clicks.
Exactly. I
Like
know.
nobody cares, right?
Nobody's
But yeah,
gonna
but this is important, right?
yeah.
This is
Yeah.
part of the routine that holistically matters. And
Yes.
and and folks don't see that part. And one of the challenges I've had in leadership for so many years, Molly, is that we talk about modeling leadership.
Yeah.
And one of the things that's rough is that if I see Mollie Eastman and she's my great boss, what I don't see is your hard charging EL executive leadership team meeting behind the doors and what
Yeah.
has to happen and all the, hey, we got to put this up on the whiteboard and solve things. And it's not easy.
Yeah.
And Molly, we need 10% more output out of you. And these are the things. And it's all the things that you're required to do, all the responsibilities, how you manage yourself in a room that's sometimes much more male dominant, and how that's working.
Yeah.
And there's all these challenges. And it's like I see actually like 20% of you as a leader, but I want to I want to model Molly and be like Molly,
Yeah.
but you're only seeing a fifth of it. You don't really
Yes.
see the holistic, all the
Yes.
parts, and some of the real hard parts where I'm like,
Totally.
let me just chew on my tongue because what I really want to say here, I'm not going to say, and,
Yes.
and I'm going to be, PC about this. We're going to actually work at this together. I'm not going to get amped up, and there's challenges. And so as leaders, it's one of the things that's really frustrating for people who just like, hey, I'm just going to model the things. We
Yeah.
don't see, and I don't think, you can correct me
Yeah.
on that. I
Yeah.
don't see we model and we don't see people doing sleep right because it's not
Yeah.
shown to us. We're not
Yeah.
there like, oh, this is the special pajamas I wear because it's more, it's it's a natural breathing fabric or whatever reason you're doing what you're doing. We're not talking about it. We're not showing that. It's almost like our private lives.
Yeah.
And I don't know if there's actually a really good model out there that's actually showing us how to do it well.
So good. Oh, so much to say here. So number one of the things that I think also depending on what we're dealing with people that might be listening and tuning in and saying, I could improve my sleep. I'd like to up level my sleep. There's many different buckets. And so one distinction that's always helpful is insomnia, like difficulty falling asleep, staying asleep, kind of getting stressed about sleep, what you're saying about performance in sleep, and how like then they know how bad it is. And so now they're even more stressed out about it.
Yeah.
That's right. That's one group. But then there's a whole other group because there's over 100 sleep-wake disorders. And there might be cases where people they're not prioritizing it. They're not really thinking about sleep, or they're dealing with sleep apnea or airway based issues or other problems with their sleep. So it's just maybe not on the forefront. So there's different ways that we'd want to educate on sleep in and of itself. But having said that, I think what's so important for all of us to kind of step back and realize is that so much of what actually does the heavy lifting for sleep happens by day. It really happens from the moment we wake up, and it does release some of the pressure, especially for those insomniacs or people that are starting to get sleep anxiety or stressed out about the results. And versus so much of the focus on the nights. Because I see that a lot too when people come my way and they'll be like, oh, like let's do all kinds of content around, the mattress, the sheets, the whatever. And those are fine. And it's not to take away from the fact that, yes, invest in some of those things and be
Yes.
thoughtful. But one of the things that I think is a very exciting time in the world of sleep is just how much education and information is coming out around circadian biology, quantum biology, chronobiology, the science of time and how time affects our biology, and really realizing how much of this is kind of rhythmic, how much of this is about shifting the focus just from the nights to how are we living those days, that wake time, kind of like with the story with your son, the power of really taking the bull by the horns by day and having that day mode, and being active and being maybe outside and sunlight and all those things and dealing powerfully with stressors or things that might be at play, but then having a powerful downshift by night, and then we need the two, so it's a really interesting juxtaposition. So I share all that because I think people might not, and I certainly didn't know when I was dealing with my period of insomnia, I had no clue that how I was living my days was going to show up and impact the ease by which I was able to fall asleep at night. So that's where I think the power can return for us. And then what you said too about it's hard for people to model, it's so true about especially the part where it seems like a lot of us have weak muscles, which is that downshifting. And how to kind of down regulate at night. There's a great book called The Power of the Down State. And that's a rare book that actually brings in HRV, heart rate variability, and sleep into the conversation, because a lot of these books aren't doing that. So that's a nice one if people are tracking that metric. But even if you're not, like, you can still get lots of information on what are some of the things that actually do help downshift our body. And they might look different than what people might think. They might think, oh, I got to have lavender and chamomile tea and all this stuff, which is fine, but it turns out there's all these other things that we might be activating our body with based on what type of foods we're eating, what time we're eating them, what the temperature is in our space and the many hours leading up, certainly the lighting environment, certainly the type of things that we're taking in, that we're reading, learning, what are on all of our screens, that sort of thing. But it is much more nuanced. And then I think the other cool thing too is if people are just like, oh, so I just got to like relax. But to also understand that there's something that I'm really calling thought timing, which is in this domain of new research where we find, particularly drawing on research known as the mind after midnight, where our thoughts appear to be existing related to on a rhythm, on its own kind of circadian rhythm, where the types of thoughts that we start to have as we get into the wee hours of the morning are very different than the thoughts that we'd have by day. So it gives more validity, or it certainly just can arguably empower us to know that we're likely to have more black and white thinking, catastrophic thoughts, sadly, suicidality rates going up in the wee hours of the morning based on kind of flawed logic of how we're thinking. And if we know this, then we can also know, okay, it's 3 a.m. I'm thinking the worst, but I can also trust that if I can just kind of make it through to sunrise or what have you, that it's very likely to look a lot different by day than it is by night. And we kind of, there's an old adage around that, things will look better if you sleep on it or in the morning. And yet it appears that we've got some real science starting to back that up. So it's a long way to say that this is a bit of an art form. This is a bit of a skill, but it's much more multifactorial than I think a lot of us might have initially thought.
Yeah, that's great. So I don't want this to turn into a session of fixed Trent. So,
Yeah.
I do want
But,
people,
it could be demonstrative of what's going on for many. Yeah.
right? Yeah, it could be helpful for many.
Yeah.
But I do want people, okay, first of all, tell people where they can find you, Mollie.
Sure. Sleepisaskill.com can act as kind of a bucket for a lot of things. So you can take a sleep assessment, get free information right away based on what you're dealing with your sleep. You can sign up for our newsletter, like you had mentioned. Thanks for that. It's called Sleep Obsessions. We've been running that for 7 years, every Monday, never missed a Monday. Love, interacting with people there. Then we've got cohorts. If people are looking to really dive in deeper, we have one of the larger Oura Ring databases for sleep optimization specifically. So most of the cohort participants are wearing Oura Rings throughout because we have a Teams dashboard that we can monitor the whole group around, which is really fun. And so that's in the cohorts. We're going to be releasing a course coming right up shortly too, so that people can have a bit more of a DIY version of that. And then if people are really struggling looking for one-on-ones or even just quick audits of their wearable data, which has been a fun offering too, they can do that, just the two of us kind of as well. So that's all at sleepisaskill.com.
That's great. And then special Mollie has offered our listeners a little benefit to the new course that's coming out, a little DIY for sure. But
Yeah.
you're going to want to reach out to team@sleepisaskill.com, team@sleepisaskill.com. Mention the podcast or WFAW, Winners Find a Way. And you will find information on the course and even a little discount.
That's
So you want to check
right.
that
Yes.
out, a little
Yes.
discount. Gotta get your
Exactly.
sleep right. Get your sleep right. So I've got to get my sleep right. And one of the things, like, let's talk about, I want to talk a little bit about your story. But one of the challenges I'll tell you about my sleep is that, and you can tell me this is just lousy, but one terrible schedule for years. And
Sure.
and part of it's, you and I's life, right? Like we speak all over the world. You're on time zones. I'm sometimes on 3 time zones a week. And so, I'm changing. I want to still rise at like 5:30 every day because that's just good for me, like to wake up at the same clock, whatever I'm in. If it's California 5:30 or it's Florida 5:30, right?
Yeah.
And so trying to find that balance. And I would say my evening routine has been subpar.
Sure.
And of course that stems from the baseball years where you get home at midnight or 12:30, you haven't eaten, and you're like, and so it's a little rough. As I think through the challenges of an entrepreneurial life, and a large family and a lot of things on my mind, I wake early in the morning at 3 or 3:30 with so much on my mind, to-dos, that my old guard was to stay in bed and think that I'll turn over, I'll relax, I'll do some breathing and go back to sleep.
Okay.
You cannot imagine my angst and frustration, I'll call it anger.
Sure.
And at 5 a.m., I'm still there after 2 hours, and I'm thinking, why didn't I just get up and work? And so my new go-to has been, if I wake, I give myself about 10 minutes. And if 10 minutes doesn't happen, I will get up, accomplish something, and return to bed at 4:30 and can sleep because I feel like I've done something, right?
Sure.
I don't know how that works for my rhythms, whether it's good, bad. I'm getting in age, right? So I'm worried about my heart and everything else.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm tracking my HRV because I'm like, wow, your variability sucks, Trent. And so, so like, what's your belief on that? What do you recommend in that category?
Oh, I'm so glad you said that, because that is one of the most popular reasons that people come our way. And one of the most common things that we hear is what people put in the bucket of wake ups. And they say, I am so frustrated. And some people have difficulty falling asleep. And that's one category. Certainly you don't want to, bulldoze past that, but wake ups are the most popular reason. And so they're not only are they waking up, and some people are waking up just multiple times, and that's frustrating them. And they're able to fall back asleep, but it's the amount of fragmentation. But then other people are just like you, where it's the wake up and then it's like, am I up for the whole day now at this point? And then the anger and the frustration and the angst, beautifully said. Okay. So there's so many reasons for this. So first off, we want to, because we can address, what are some of the strategies you could do. But also we want to get to the root of what is likely at play for the why for your flavor of wake ups. And now I want to also preface this with, I did a IG live at one point, which was pointing to 22 reasons for wake ups. And it was not an exhaustive list. There are so many reasons for wake ups, but I'll share some of the most popular ones. So The first very common reason is often related to glucose and metabolism. And that's one of the reasons that Oura Ring has now partnered up with Dexcom, a continuous glucose monitor company, to the tune of 75 million, if I recall correctly, to really demonstrate the profound relationship between our metabolism and our sleep. And so what you can now do with that is you can get the Stelo, which is the CGM from Dexcom that's available without a prescription. This is only within the last year and change, which is super cool because we used to just have to get a prescription. It was not super expensive, but it was expensive. And now you can get it more affordably, and you wear the CGM and the data will be streamed through onto your Oura Ring. So you can see if you are having spikes and crashes all day. Commonly what happens by day gets mirrored in the night. What happens by day gets mirrored in the night in many areas of our life, stress, but also with our glucose and insulin relationship. So you can really see that so powerfully because it will track all day and all night. So it's for 24 hours. And then you'll often see spiking and then crashing pretty reliably because REM, rapid eye movement, it tends to happen in the second half of our night. And it's a very metabolism taxing or rich activity. And so it takes up a certain amount of energy. And so we often see this dropping of glucose at around that 3, 4, 5 in the morning. And then people are now not only awakened because it's a stress response to the body, but now it's the kind of awakening where it can be harder to fall back asleep thereafter because now you have that kind of surge of stress response in the body. So we want to ideally, what I would love for most people is, can we, if we're not dealing with major anxiety, stressors, sleep anxiety, then using these wearables can be profound because then if we layer that with continuous glucose monitors, we can learn a lot about our health. And then we can see, is that at its root? And because over 93% of Americans in recent research are dealing with some form of metabolic dysfunction, many listeners, people out there are going to have some tinge of that at play. So that would be a big one. Then another one is I'm trying to really sound the alarm for undiagnosed sleep disorders or untreated sleep disorders. And again, there's over 100 sleep-wake disorders, and many people just have no idea that they're dealing with them. And that can be a really common reason for waking in the middle of the night, particularly during REM, because they tend to flare up, especially if we're talking about respiratory-based sleep disorders like sleep apnea, upper air resistance syndrome, snoring, etc., bruxism and beyond. So when we're looking at those, we tend to have an uptick during REM, which is that early morning hours. And that's when people further get annoyed. Or it can be positional when maybe you fell asleep on your side or what have you, and now you've made your way to your back, and maybe you're pretty good on your side or stomach, but then when you go on your back, then you have a whole flare up of snoring or airway difficulties, which is super, super common. So I suggest everyone testing. I would like to see them test not just once, but multiple times, because we can now get at-home tests for about $150 or so. I have no affiliation, but Lofta, Empower Sleep, some of these are companies that can help facilitate you testing, and just it's super easy. They're either a watch or a ring, depending on which companies you're going with, and you can get a lot of information about what else might be at play with your sleep. So those are two big ones. But then there can be a whole other slew of reasons. And sometimes it's just not even that glamorous, or it's kind of maybe a frustrating one to hear. But for many, it can just be we're tipping the scales on that sympathetic dominant state, and we're, just managing a lot in our lives and what have you. And then we're having that kind of cortisol rise in the morning, and we're dealing with too much of that kind of stress response. And now it's waking us up, and we're having a harder time falling back asleep, because when we are in that sympathetic state, can feel a little unsafe for the body to turn off. So that can be a really common one. Also, anxiety, depression, tend to have sleep disturbances as well. So all of those are very common. Another common one can be exactly what you're talking about with the travel, with all of that rhythm disruption, because then our circadian pulse can often be weaker than we would like to see for it. So if the body struggles to really know, okay, I know it's 5:30, but is it Hong Kong? Is it LA? Where the heck are we?
Right.
Right. And so that can be really problematic, because then the strength of our cortisol and melatonin pulse, which are two really important hormones for sleep and just life, but they are kind of exist on two different poles. And so we're looking for a strong cortisol pulse in the morning at reliable, like say if you really were, if someone was waking up at 5:30 every single day on the same time zone reliably, it would be such a strong, powerful cortisol pulse. It's like natural coffee. You're ready to go. And we actually want that. But if we're moving all around and sometimes we're sleeping in to cope with the, 30-hour flight and whatever, then the body doesn't quite know, well, do we release cortisol here or are we still sleeping? What's at play? So that starts to dim. And that then impacts our melatonin pulse on the other side, which is our evenings. So if that's not surging, then we're not having sufficient melatonin in the nights. And so that's going to impact also the ability for us to sleep, throughout the entire course of the night. So those are some, but then there's more. So I won't exhaust everyone, but I'll also say, lab testing, I'm excited too that I really think we're in a sleep revolution right now because wearables are starting to add on health labs. So things like Whoop and Aura are starting to allow you to test or to encourage testing. So blood work, urine, et cetera, so that we can see, because there's very clear certain markers that tend to show up in our HRVs, so our inflammation markers, our iron, certain things that can, and certainly cardiovascular health, et cetera, that can show up in HRV also, but our sleep and sleep fragmentation can show up around thyroid health, can show up around vitamin D, our B vitamins, iodine, some of these other things, certainly leptin. I think that's a big one that people are not looking at enough at all and are not managing well. So, and leptin is a really kind of circadian dependent hormone. And so I think that's going to be a big one that's going to start getting a lot more press in the future. So those are some things that you could, and not exhaustive, there's more, but those are some things that people start to discover when they start doing more in-depth testing than we had done before. And if something's glaringly off, that can be a big part of the problem, why we're having all those wake-ups. Not to mention eating late. Now, I am quite bullish on a pretty aggressive early kind of almost flipping things. You know how for so long we were all about intermittent fasting, you skip breakfast and it was like you got like an award for like not having breakfast. So, it's like the cool thing. And yet we're now seeing that it might be kind of turned upside down. Like we're actually looking to flip that, more front loading our calories by day. And this is known as circadian rhythm intermittent fasting. And then eating within the rhythms of nature. When the sun is out, you're largely eating the bulk of your calories and less as it gets to sunset. So things of that nature, when we start going past sunset, which many of us are, then that can show up in our sleep results and sleep quality more than a lot of people realize. Not to mention the other big one is temperature. So I see for people, when you bring in, we're looking for around 60 to 67 degrees Fahrenheit in your ambient temperature throughout the course of the night, which is a lot cooler than a lot of people are sleeping. But even with that, I see benefits when people do that and then they pair it with cooling mattress toppers, whether it's like Chili, 8, Orion. Orion's a newer one, so these can really change the game for HRV, deep sleep, and also sleep content, or the ability to sleep throughout the course of the night without all that sleep disruption. And then lastly, I would say, since, you can't even get into all the other reasons for wake up, so those are really popular ones, it's the how do you respond when we do have that wake up, or those wake ups. And you demonstrated brilliantly, it's like kind of the two sides of the coin that a lot of people bring in. It's like either, okay, do I try to relax and just rest and like hope it works out? Or do I get up and just say, call it, we're going to work now. Now this is a bit of a fine line. CBTI, cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, and something called ACTI, acceptance commitment therapy for insomnia. Those are two approaches that people could look into more on the management of wake ups and the psychological and behavioral response once they're happening. Because I want us to figure out the why that they're happening. But while we're doing that, then, and for all of us, we're always going to have some wake ups. So how do you respond? So I would say by and large, we are trying to train the body to know what time it is and what to be doing when. So we are aiming to still maintain kind of quiet, dim lighting, relaxation. And so really sending those signals that this is not a time to start activating, to rising heart rate, to bringing cortisol earlier, like, because you can entrain the body to do any timeline that you want. And so we might be inadvertently training it to wake up earlier routinely. So we want to be careful with that. But then you pointed to something really important. If you are like fuming in bed, if you are angry, if you are frustrated, because that happens a lot, then that can make sense. This is a CBTI approach to just kind of get up, do something relaxing, calming in dim lighting, kind of just let that sleepiness reemerge and kind of take your mind off it, so that then when you are starting to feel sleepy again, then you can kind of go back to bed and have a round two. That's the CBTI approach. ACTI or ACT is about practicing acceptance. And it's about acknowledging, okay, I'm getting really, really angry right now. I'm really pissed off. And, can kind of call that out, notice that, and then practice that. Okay. And I'm awake at 3. I'd rather not be awake at 3, but I'm awake at 3. So how can I kind of relax and actually maybe enjoy this time? And one powerful thing that a lot of people see, with this that I've seen make such a difference is in the world of ACT, it's that you're still getting restoration for the body if you are in that kind of supine position in a darkened room, relaxing, the heart rate's down, the body can still do some reparative mechanisms. So it almost takes a bit of the pressure off. And you can say that this time for myself is still helping to kind of recharge me. I've seen that make a big difference for myself and for other clients because, like you said, that performance anxiety can kick in, and force and sleep do not do well together.
Yeah, that's so good. Like it's amazing because I do think we want to get in next is like our pre-routine, right? And one of the things that I think is I've aged, I'm around again the athletes, and we've all learned hydration, hydration, hydration. Well, we're
Yeah.
drinking a gallon of water a day just to
Yes.
get back. And a lot of it's a break even, right? But part of that is that if you don't do that gallon early, and now you're in your
Yeah.
late 50s, like you've got this issue of like, man, I'm gonna have to get up 3 times a night to go to the bathroom, which also runs me at risk that now I've just messed my sleep cycle, and now I'm trying to go back to sleep. And hey, if I'm getting up every 90 minutes to 120 minutes to go to the bathroom because I took in a half a gallon of water after 8 p.m., this
Yeah.
is not a great pre-night routine, right?
Yeah.
Like, and to your point, I'm a person who wakes up at 5:30, like, where's the water? Like, let's go
Yes,
now because I
totally.
can't have it
Yeah.
later,
Yeah.
right? So I got to get it now. And the daytime, I'm pretty regular, about every 90, 120 minutes. I got to get to a bathroom, and that
Yep.
just feels right to my rhythm. But
Sure.
I don't want to keep that all night. And so
Totally.
I've got to be able to work that. And if I don't do that routine pre, and all of a sudden it's going to be in my evening routine, I'm going to lose. Is that fair?
Mm. Yeah, great call out. Now, couple things. So I love what you said about moving or just being mindful of some of these things that can show up reliably. So fluid intake, giving ourselves enough of a buffer before bed makes a big difference. And a misattribution error that I've seen for a lot of people, is that sometimes it's not always, sometimes it truly is a mechanism of we drank too much fluids and now we just got to wake up and pee, and you just got to deal with it for that night, and you'll change it the next night. But unfortunately, what we see for a lot of people is that they start to say, oh, my prostate must be a problem. I'm getting
Yeah.
older. And then they're just like, oh, resigned to waking up to go pee. And this is a frustrating thing around pee. However, um, what we can often see is that the root cause might be more hidden, which is commonly these sleep disorders. And so I'd really love for people to just to humor me to get this at least one sleep test. Just do it for $150. You can just go online. It comes to you in like a couple days. Because so commonly you wake up and you think it's because you have to go pee, because you can go pee because you haven't gone pee for hours. So of course, but is the source point that, or is it actually some of these other things? Is it because of limb movement? So a lot of people are, dealing with restless leg, or they might not realize it, or lots of, you can see this in wearables with your, kind of restfulness score and movement indicators. But at the same time, what we want people to understand is there is so much that you can do to make a difference if you are realizing that sleep disorders are underneath there. And I would tell you, it's so rare that I have people test for sleep disorders and they come back with no problems. I mean, the amount of times, I think it's one of the biggest disruptions that's going to be happening in the health and wellness game is as we get more wearables that are helping to flag, because we're not quite there yet. The consumer grade is not there, but eventually I think we're very close to be able to have these wearables say, flag, you should test for, you demonstrate signs of possible sleep apnea, upper air resistance syndrome, restless leg, etc. Because then we see that is the cause for the having to go pee so often. So we just want to make sure we're not stepping over that.
That's good. I think that before we get into the nighttime routine, one of the psychological effects that I'm concerned about wearables, right? Is
Yeah.
that one of the things when I was tracking a lot of my stuff very closely was, sometimes too much data, right? And
Yes,
it's
I
like,
understand.
yeah,
Yeah.
I should feel like tired because everything looks bad on my numbers, and I'm like,
Yes.
psychologically, I'm like, you know what? I would plow through this on any given day. I have played with no sleep. I have done all sorts
Yeah.
of things in my life on adrenaline. Not that I recommend it, right? But
Yes. Yes.
I've done it. And like to sit there and say, hey, listen, I'm not gonna be as strong as I should be, and maybe I should cancel this really 1 o'clock appointment because it's really important, and I'm gonna move it because looks like my sleep numbers weren't right. Like I
Yes.
do get
You're
concerned with
right. You're
psychological
right.
effect. I
Yep.
hear entrepreneurs and leaders talking about this, like, wait a minute, man. Like, there's this psychological effect. Like, yeah, I probably didn't get it because I wasn't on my A game. We didn't sleep. Like, okay, well, Tio, man, like, hold on. So I think there's some of this placebo
Yes.
effect. Can you appreciate that?
Yes, I'm so glad you said that. So important because we do see actual real research where people will have this nocebo effect, as they call it, instead of the placebo, the nocebo, because then they'll see, crappy scores. And this is even in research where people slept totally fine, but they told them they slept like crap, and then they kind of change their behaviors. They have more error rates. They just act like, and they bring into fruition that reality. So it can get pretty trippy, and I completely agree. So it does take a really important, consistently checking in on the relationship that we're creating with these things. And I would also love to see a future where we can have different ways that we are taking this information in, because I would love to, the clients I'm working with, I would love to be able to have their data streamed in on my side, and that they're not even having to see the data, and that then we can review trends based data, every month or every couple weeks or what have you. So they're just seeing, oh, okay, I'm trending in this direction, but they're not getting messed with on the day to day. Because you're so right. And that's the thing. Like, we're not trying to train for fragility. We're not trying to then act like we're so sensitive and not able, because resiliency, I mean, heart rate variability is at its core about your ability to recover, your ability to bring resiliency in second to second to second. And now that's not to say I've seen miraculous things where people have been able to really just trim away a lot of these things that they were doing that they had no idea were impacting how they were feeling day to day. So they would like double their HRV and they're feeling like $1,000,000, and it's just amazing. And now they have these new kind of behavioral tools and things that are at play. So I've seen like magic, but then I've also seen exactly what you're talking about: fixation on data, fears of, the daily stressors. There's this daily stress count on a lot of these wearables or activation. And so then they start fearing themselves getting activated, which you need kind of like a workout. You've got to stress the body to be able to have those gains. Same with even psychological stressors. A lot of that, there's a great book called The Upside of Stress, and looking at some of the positives of having stressors so we can grow and expand. So yes, and there are times where with clients we'll either have data vacations, or it might not make sense for certain personalities or times in our life to get this information. Or if we, maybe a new parent and there's certain things out of your control, it really might not serve us for a stretch of time to have some of this information.
Okay. I love, and I think people are challenged by eustress versus distress, right?
Yes.
And we
Yes.
can create our own sleep anxiety, right?
Yeah.
Because we just put
100%.
ourselves under distress because it's like my numbers aren't right. So
Yes.
I really appreciate this. For everybody out there, a couple things as I wrap this up with Molly. Like one, reach out to her. team@sleepisaskill.com.
That's
You can
right.
learn more about her upcoming course. Mention Winners Find a Way, mention the show, and Mollie's going to take care of you, get you
Yes.
information and a discount, which is great. For me, reach out to me, Trent@leadershipity.com. Get on my schedule. I would love to talk about you and your growth and what you're doing. We always help everybody, and I will send you a copy of Flourish,
Oh,
which
please.
is the business growth system. It is the whole thing. It's the playbook right
Great.
there. So
Amazing.
that's happening. And so as we go into this, I want to end, winners find a way, Mollie. And I know you've overcome a lot from this insomnia, everything else in your life. Talk to us maybe about the 5 key elements right now that everyone can do and control to really start building a holistic health around their sleep. And one of the things I've heard, and if you haven't heard it, and she's mentioned a lot here, right? She's mentioned books, right? The Power of the Downstate, right?
Yep.
Um, uh, Mind After Midnight, The Upside of Stress. She has a ton of core work. Obviously, her number one newsletter of Sleep Obsessions, which is amazing, and her podcast. There's a lot of data out there for you to get educated. And I can tell you that what I've learned is each one of these small tips, if it's added 5-10% better, like
Yeah.
from a in perpetuity, that has really had impact on my life. So
Mm.
so as we sit here and talk about the 5 things, I'm going to lead with the first thing I heard you that I need to do that I haven't done, which is probably go get a test and find out exactly where I'm at. Right.
Please. Yes. And let me
That's,
know how that turns
I'll
out.
put
I would
that
love
as
that.
one of our 5. Is that fair?
Okay. Yes. I'm excited for
Okay.
you.
So tell us the
Amazing.
other things you feel like, hey, start taking some control. What are some of those things we can do?
Oh, so good. And please let me know the results of that test. I'm excited for you. And so a couple of other things. So one, I know we talked a lot about wearables. I do 100% agree that certain people it's not appropriate. And yet, if we are listening, if it does feel like we're in a state of we really want to what gets measured gets managed type of energy, then getting a strong sleep wearable. Right now, I like Oura Ring and Whoop in particular, but there's other ones that are great too. So just getting some information can often serve us. Pairing that with additional information, and this doesn't have to be forever, by the way. This could be a stretch of time to kind of get a baseline understanding of where our health and well-being is at. But getting some of those labs, Function Health has been really popping up and really affordable and customizable for people to get some of those labs that I was mentioning so we can know what we're dealing with, because people just often don't know that they're having major deficiencies or problems in certain areas. And once they know better, they can do better. And also continuous glucose monitors can make a big difference too, because a lot of people have no idea that they are spiking and crashing all day long and wondering why they're anxious, and then they're tired, and then they're just the day is a roller coaster, and then of course the night is as well. So you can glean all that information. So that's in the wearable domain, wearable and data domain. So I would love for people to get that baseline information. Then, and if we're throwing in additional info, please also look at DEXA scans too, because our muscle mass, our fat content, where the fat is falling, is it near kind of the neck? And it could be impacting our possibility of how we're breathing throughout the course of the night. All of that is telling too. So then I want people to think about their days and nights in a 2-part system, kind of day mode and night mode. And that day mode is a time of up regulation. And I want for it to start at about the same time every day. So if you get nothing else of what I'm talking about, it'd be this part. Consistency around 7 days a week. Now, I know if we're dealing with travel, it can throw a wrench into all this. But please, if you are dealing with travel, especially long haul, download the Time Shifter app. It can make a big difference for management of making time shifting like a verb, like an action, so that you can start time shifting in advance of your travel, during, and after. But so for the average person, if you're not traveling a ton, 7 days a week, you're looking for the same wake up time. So say it's 7 a.m. It's plus or minus around 30 minutes every single day. We've got even more research that's come out around the importance of that sleep consistency. So 7 days a week, you're waking up at the same time. Then you're going outside and you're getting bright light in your eyes as soon as possible. And then you're also getting a strong breakfast that has protein rich, blood sugar stabilizing options right away, which is counterintuitive, I think, for a lot of us. But it's starting to front load so that we're stabilizing our blood sugar and having kind of metabolism win right out of the gate. And that's also wake promoting, or trying to boost up that cortisol, tell the body it is time to be awake. It is not time to sleep. So eating can do that. Sunlight can do that. Movement can do that as well. So this could be a time either for kind of gentle walk outside, or for some people, especially if you're having blunted cortisol response in the morning, you could bring your exercise training on the earlier side, but certainly getting your exercise on the first part of the day when the sun is out. And then so everything's kind of upregulated. You're activating, you're dealing with the stressful emails, the conversations that you got to have, all of that can make your mind move. You're doing those things. And then you're shifting over to night mode. And in night mode, we are looking to also lower our body temperature. We're looking to down regulate. That Power the Downshift book can have some ideas of things that you could do. And you can also measure all this with your HRV. So you can see, are you actually kind of relaxing, or is the body still staying kind of stuck in that gear? Andrew Huberman has popularized kind of non-sleep deep rest protocols. So those can be things you can sprinkle in oddly by day. People are often confused by this because they think it's like just around night. But we're trying to train by day before you get to the stressful bed, if you've been stressing out about sleep or whatever, that you can change that gear to parasympathetic response, and then that can translate to the nights. And then we absolutely want to be having a much darker environment than most people are doing at night, because you're getting bright days and dark nights. And it should look weird. So like if you're on a Zoom call and someone's calling in from, it's their night in whatever, Dubai or something, and they should be in pretty much total darkness. They should look really weird. And or should be like red backgrounds, like red lights or incandescent candle lights, blue blockers that are orange or red. All of those things, it's not just like a nice idea. It can measurably impact the amount of melatonin that you're producing, not just for you, but for the whole household. So even if the family is like, oh, my family never go for this, this will help them markedly. So we want to bring that in. We're lowering the body temperature, or we're lowering the ambient temperature in the space. And we're changing the types of things that we're taking in on our screens, stressful information or whatever. We are abstaining from all that. And then we're building in some of these ways where we can work on like breath work or other things. Moonbird's a little gadget that I like for that. Somni is another gadget that uses kind of transcranial electric stimulation before bed. Dr. Matthew Walker is a part of that one. So different things that you could play with, but you don't even, if you don't want to invest in anything, you can just simply practice that downshifting by night. And so those are some staples that you can work with, but they all are under the umbrella of circadian rhythm entrainment. That's where you can look to find additional information on how to do this.
Love it. Let me add a few things that I do that I've implemented.
Yeah, please.
One is that I get cold in the morning. I used to do cold
great.
plunges at night. That was bad, it turned out. I want to get cold plunge or a cold shower in the morning, get my lymphatic system going, wake me up, and really get rolling. Better than coffee. And I find that huge what I do that morning. I have not used the light right away. It's very interesting, and that's hard right now in the Midwest because it feels like it's dark till 8 a.m. and it's really weird.
Yes.
And then 2 is my evening routine. 3 hours before sleep, I got to cut off food and drink because I get worried about what I'm digesting overnight, as well as liquids in. And then 2 hours, and I'm terrible. No more work. 2 hours before I go to bed. And I am awful at this. With my travel schedule and kids, I have gotten very comfortable working 9 to 11 and knocking out things that need to be done for the next day or whatever. And so I have to change that. I also have my own sauna. So I go heat about 2 hours before bed and heat my body, start getting myself wound down. I never bring my light down, which I'm going to start doing. And then, my newest one is at that 1 hour mark, start bringing the temperature in the house down and no more screens. And that's another tough one for me.
That's for everyone. Yeah, I love that you're sharing all this. Also, I would encourage people to potentially try even a little bit longer for their last bite of food. So even 4 or 5 hours before bed, and just experiment and see what happens
On
with your.
food.
Yeah, yeah. With
Drink
your
too, or no, just food?
just on food, and also there was a big study for like exercise, where we see at least 4 hours before bed, kind of ceasing any high intensity, but to be conservative, 6 hours before bed, and that was with landed in
On workout.
nature, and it was with Whoop users. So
So
that would
you night workout buffs are hosed right there.
exactly.
Yeah.
I
I've
know.
done
Such
it.
a
I've
bummer.
done it.
Ex-
Like when you get it in,
Same,
like
yeah.
sometimes it's 9 o'clock at the hotel, right? So
I
like,
know. It's like that's the only time I know, and it's not to certainly because I definitely want people to get the message that movement and muscle mass and all of that is so helpful for our sleep, for HRV. I mean, HRV. It's like we have the most evidence by far, largely pointing to exercise for how to raise it.
use
That's not to
space.
yeah, it's not to say that's the only thing for sure, but that's the bulk of the information for sure. So we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, but just rearranging life so that the timing is solid. But that last bite of food is a huge one. And then you'll see like Brian Johnson, the Don't Die guy, and what have you, looking at having his last bite of food at like 11 a.m. So, we're seeing people do
Wow.
really aggressive last bite of food. Now, for women, kind of managing that thoughtfully, always measure your leptin when you're doing these things, and other markers. But I think people be really shocked at the difference at how much lower your heart rate gets and how much improved your HRV often is if you just move it back a bit.
I love it. I love it.
Amazing.
For everybody, hey, this is another episode of Winners Find a Way. We're talking about sleep, and sleep is a skill. And the expert here in the room for by far, it's so much learning today with Mollie Eastman. She's wonderful, based in Austin, Texas. You can reach out again, team at sleepisaskill.com. Mention Winners Find a Way. You'll get more information on their upcoming course as well as a discount for that. You're going to want to follow her on her socials. Check out the newsletter, Sleep Obsessions. You're going to want to follow because you are going to get major benefit. And I'm telling you right now, you are going to be a better performer when you get sleep right. It is going to have significant impact. And it's not just a 2-3% uptick. This is in perpetuity. You're going to get 2-3% uptick right away. And then you're going to keep gaining ground on that. And you're going to find out your level of productivity, one of those big ones we all want, is going to grow exponentially and is no joke. And by the way, you will model this for other people, making your team members better. And I'm telling you, it's exponential for your organization. We're building championship teams all the time. It's what you're responsible for. Take that personal responsibility first. Get started there. Reach out to me direct, Trent@leadershipity.com. DM me. Happy to get you on my schedule. Also happy to send you a copy of Flourish. This is Winners Find a Way. And until next time, you will see us every day. Podcast live. We are live every Thursday, 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific on LinkedIn Live, YouTube Live, and our Facebook page. And then, of course, the podcast drops every Friday morning. Check it out and download this. Send it to a friend. They're going to want to hear from Mollie Eastman. Everybody else, until next time, winners find a way.